Hi everyone, I'm Matt Hillier. I'm a property photographer here in the UK, and today I'm going to be reviewing this, which is the Sunwayfoto GH Pro 2 and GC-01 clamped head. Right, so let's talk about the styling and design first, then, and we'll start with the styling. It's obviously a black tripod head. There isn't really any colour on it at all, to be honest. There are some white markings, and the Sunwayfoto logo and product names are also marked in white. And there is a tripod sort of level, a bubble level on top. You can see that there, which is, you know, the standard sort of high-vis yellow. But other than that, it's quite a minimalist unit. It's been given quite an industrial sort of element to it, I guess you could say. There are some curved edges, but there's also some squared off edges, and I think overall it just kind of looks really cool. You know, when this is mounted on your tripod, it looks nice and compact. It doesn't like have ungainly limbs sticking out in all different directions, and you know, things that help you operate the head are neatly packaged into an overall product that it's obviously about function, but it has great form as well. So I don't think it's compromising in its styling in order to provide the functionality that you'd want from a geared head. So talking about the design as well then, it's based around obviously the geared mechanism at the core of this tripod head, and these two large adjustment knobs control both the side-to-side adjustment and the forward and backward adjustment. Now these are complemented as well in this particular setup by this GC-01 clamped head, because it's a geared clamped head, and this other tertiary adjustment knob allows for geared adjustment in 360 degrees of panning motion. So you've got all planes of adjustment covered with the design of this head. Now you can buy this head as just the GH Pro 2, which comes with a standard clamp head on top, but they also make the sort of, well, the combination as a kit really, with the GC-01 clamped geared clamp in place, and that's labelled as the GH Pro 2 Plus. Now, in all honesty, you might as well go for this setup, because I think it's only about 60 grams heavier than the standard GH Pro 2, so you're not adding that much weight for the extra functionality of that geared clamp up top, and you never know when you're going to need to use that. So I think it's always useful to have the maximum range of adjustability and controllability at your fingertips for, you know, any sort of situation really. But yeah, the design you know, not only houses the mechanism, but also offers that sort of fantastic flexibility of that range of adjustment right throughout all of the focal, sort of not focal planes, but, you know, adjustment planes. The one thing that's quite important to note about this tripod head as well, though, is the fact that everything's lined up down the middle. So you have your tripod mount sort of in the centre of the base plate, where my finger is, and then you have the adjustment plane set up so that your camera sits perfectly centrally above the point of the adjustment, the pivot of adjustment, if you like. So any change you make to any of these adjustment knobs is going to keep your camera dead centre to the point in which you position your tripod. And when you compare that against some other geared heads that exist out there on the market, particularly at the price point this retails for in most countries, you find that the camera sits slightly off centre one way or another, or slightly forwards, or slightly, you know, behind the point of sort of the central position. And I'm sure if you have those sorts of heads, you get used to using them, and you'd adjust your workflow to take into account the slight shift in position of your camera as you adjust each adjustment plane. But you just don't need to worry about that with this head, because they've really thought about that as an issue and have centralised everything perfectly. You know, and when it comes to the mounting system, you've obviously got a standard tripod mount at the bottom, so you don't have to have a Sunwayfoto tripod, for example, you could use this head on other tripods that are have a standard mounting system. Not all of them do, and I learned that with my previous system that I had before I switched over to Sunwayfoto. But at the top, it's got the Arca Swiss mounting plate as well, and the standard clamp that comes atop the GH Pro 2 has an Arca Swiss mounting system, just like this GC-01 does. So that's fantastic. I think Arca Swiss is definitely the way to go. You just need an Arca Swiss L bracket. You can either get a Sunwayfoto one if they make one for your camera model, or you can use your existing generic one, or any Arca Swiss mounting plate will fit atop this tripod head. They do actually include a plate with the tripod, but in all honesty, don't use that. Get yourself an L bracket, and then the ability to switch between portrait and landscape orientation is just dead easy, dead quick, and you're just speeding up and you're maximising the pace with which you can operate if you're waiting for the light, or in my case, if you want to get around the house as quickly as possible and as efficiently as possible. The ability to have that Arca Swiss functionality of switching between landscape and portrait is fantastic. You can adjust this right over if you want to, and sort of twist it into a vertical shooting position. Takes a bit of doing because it's a geared head, but I don't bother with that. I want to keep the adjustment of these knobs to a minimum, and I just want to use them to fine tune my composition when I'm setting up my photo. So yeah, in terms of the design, there's lots of elements there that can help you. You do maybe need some other accessories to go with it to get the most out of it, like that L bracket that I mentioned. But yeah, it's a great design, universally accepted by a lot of other brands out there, so it's compatible across a wide variety of other tripods and other L brackets. Sunwayfoto make a whole range of L brackets though, so I'm sure there'll be one for your camera out there if you have a look on their website. And yeah, in terms of some negatives about the design, there are the markings which I mentioned in the styling comment. Now, I don't use them. I just do it by eye. Some people out there may want to use the precision of exact degrees of measurement or whatever they're supposed to be. But I find that the little marker points which help you line up, say finding 0 to get it perfectly level, I don't know if you can see this, but they're not quite. So there's a marker point there for 0, and there's the section that you can use to line it up, and can see they're quite far apart. And this one being where it is, right underneath this geared clamp plate, it can actually be quite hard to see when they're lined up properly. So I just end up doing it by eye, and quite often actually whatever you're photographing, whether it's a landscape, whether it's a bit of macro work, whether it's a property, an interior, things are rarely perfectly square anyway. Even in new build houses, things are not always perfectly square. So I find that I don't often use those. In fact, I don't use them at all. It's a bonus that they're there, better to have them than not, I guess, but I don't use them. The one thing I do use, however, is the distance markings on the Arca Swiss plate at the top, because they can be quite useful for centralising your camera when you're mounting it either in landscape or portrait. So that's quite useful, because the L bracket that I've got, which is a Sunwayfoto L bracket, that does have a marker on it which is central to your sensor. So when the L bracket is attached to your camera, that marker lines up perfectly with the centre of your sensor. So when you line that marker up with these markings on the Arca Swiss clamp head or clamp plate, you know that your sensor's perfectly lined up with that plane of adjustment, that sort of pivot point right down through the tripod head. So any adjustments you make, your sensor's going to stay perfectly central to all of those adjustments, which is going to improve your photography and mean that there's less sort of corrective work to do with either the position of your tripod or whatever. If you can see sort of in there, just in this section, just in there, you can see a little sort of hint of gold, sort of bronzy colour. Now that is one of the gear mechanisms. So you can see it just in there. Now that is not completely exposed, but you can obviously see it. So someone shooting in dusty or sandy conditions, or even maybe if you get this out in the rain too much, you could start to see some premature wear over time as grit and dirt may build up in that. For me, that's not an issue. Yes, I do use this in my landscape photography, but I haven't experienced any issues in the year or so that I've been using this for. And in my property photography work, well, I'm inside, so yes, it might be tipping it down outside, and I do sometimes take my tripod out to get shots outside, but if it's tipping it down, I don't want to be fucking about being too pedantic with my adjustments, because by that point I'm going to have got rain on the lens, and it's just going to be useless, and I'm probably going to be going back to reshoot the externals at another point anyway. So for me, it's not a major deal, but it's worth mentioning. It'd be interesting to see if in future developments they maybe manage to work out a way of covering that gearing a little bit more, just to protect it for those of you that want to use your tripod head in more extreme conditions. Just to finish on the design side of things as well, then I mentioned that bubble level on top previously. I would say that it's sort of useful, but really what you need to do is you need to level your tripod head before you then mount your camera on, because as soon as you mount your camera on the top plate, you're covering up the bubble level. Now my camera's got a built-in electronic level, so I do use that sometimes just to help me on some shoots, and you can also get the little hot shoe mounted levels people use, but again, if you get it perfectly level using the bubble level on here, the markings on the tripod head, it's not necessarily actually going to line up with whatever you're shooting. So sometimes being perfectly level doesn't suit your subject. And as I said before, even in new builds and properties where you're square onto a scene, like this fireplace here, I'm doing that by eye. I'm looking at the camera, I'm looking through the viewfinder at the LCD screen that offers that great field of view, and I'm lining it up by eye. Yes, the geared head helps me immensely to get that precisely composed, but I'm not really relying on the markings and bubble level to do that. So for me, they're not really an added benefit, but it doesn't take up any space. It probably actually saves weight, because the plastic will be lighter than whatever metal, the aluminium that would be there in its place. But it's not really something that I think is an amazing benefit to have. So one thing that you may have noticed whilst I've been talking about the design and so on is the fact that it can take quite a long time and a lot of effort to move the tripod head into position using the gearing and the associated adjustment knobs. But where Sunwayfoto have tackled that problem a little bit differently to other tripod manufacturers is they've included these flip out sort of handles. So they, if I can get it to focus, they allow you to really quickly wind the tripod into the required position, and it's nice and smooth, it's simple, they pack away, they fold back into the actual sort of knobs themselves. Just like that. And yeah, I find myself using it quite often. The fact that the tripod head goes to 90 degrees forwards means that if you're ever wanting to get a top-down shot, it can actually be quite quick and simple just to point your camera straight down and then obviously wind it back up into its standard position, and then when you're ready to take your shot or you're finished on your shoot and you want to pack away, they just flip up back into position, and it's dead simple. So just to go through some of the raw facts and figures then, for those that are interested in the precise numbers, this unit here, as I have it, weighs 731 grams, and that includes the geared clamp at the top and the GH Pro 2 main body of the tripod head. You can buy this without the geared clamp, it just comes with a standard Arca Swiss clamp on top, and that comes in at 671 grams. But in all honesty, that extra 60 grams saving in weight is not going to make that much difference when you factor in your camera, lens, tripod, and all the other accessories that you might have attached to it. And you might as well have the added functionality, I think, of the geared clamp at the top, because, you know, when you are needing to compose your shot and you need that extra level of adjustment and the fine-tuning capabilities that this offers you, you're going to miss that more than you'd miss the saving of 60 grams in weight. In terms of the weight that the whole unit here can take, it is rated at 4 kilograms as a maximum payload, which is easily enough to cover your camera, lens, lighting, microphones, setup, filters, whatever you might have on there. I've got a Sigma 150 to 600 and I have used that on this, and it copes fine. You know, the adjustment knobs, the fluidity of the adjustment is always spot on. You don't feel any imbalance from having a heavy setup tilted too far forward or back. It's always dead easy to get it back up into the sort of default upright position. And in terms of the range that those adjustment knobs offer and the gearing offers, you've got 90 degrees forwards, you've got 80 degrees backwards, and you've got 40 degrees side to side. The geared clamp on the top, you can keep spinning that 360 degrees, you know, for as long as your heart desires. It'd be a bit slow, but you've got the full range of adjustment on that geared clamp. There's of course a ball head, loosen the ball head off and bam, you can be straight in there, tighten it up, you're in position. It doesn't offer you the same level of control as a geared head, but they've tried to overcome that difference in speed by adding in the little sort of factors of those fold out handles. And actually when you look at the handles as well, when we talk about the weight, you can see they've cut out sections of the metal. So, and then, you know, just under there as well, you can see this section here has been sort of machined in a particular way just to minimise the amount of material physically that's needed to make this head, and that all helps to bring the weight down. And it's certainly a lighter setup than the original GH Pro 2. This is actually sort of like a facelifted model, if you like. But yeah, it just all helps, and it just proves again that Sunwayfoto think forwardly, and they're always thinking about how they can perfect their designs, not resting on their laurels. And it's good to see them sort of make small improvements where they can be made, and it'd be exciting to see what they come up with next, really. So moving on to accessories as well then, when you first receive the product, mine at least came in a really nice red presentation box. Now I got mine as two separate sort of pieces of equipment. I got mine as the GH Pro 2 core head, and then I got the GC-01 geared clamp separately. The geared clamp came in its own box. Wasn't as nice as this. I would expect that if you buy the GH Pro 2 Plus kit, which comes included with the GC-01 clamp plate, you'd get it in a very similar box. Obviously that had both in one, but I can prise it open. Inside, as well as the head itself, it comes with some pretty chunky foam padding just to protect it in transit, which is nice to see. You get your instruction booklet. Incidentally, if you get the GC-01 clamp separately, that comes with a set of instructions on how to switch out your old clamp plate for the GC-01 plate. It's fairly easy to follow, and I did that to obviously build my kit up, but you can get it with that fitted as standard if you want to. There's also a little pouch of tools, some spare rubber gaskets, some O-rings, a few Allen keys, a lens cloth, that sort of thing, and you get a rather lovely neoprene pouch as well that you can use to store it in. So if this is not your main head, if you have a ball head or a gimbal head or a video head that you sometimes switch out for, you know, you don't have to have this rattling around in your cupboard or in your kit bag. You can put it in this nice protective pouch, and it will protect not only your head, but it will also protect your other kits as well. Now, I don't use that because this stays on my tripod all the time, but it's nice to see. I know some photographers actually, they pop this over the top of their tripod head, use the drawstrings to tighten it around the head upside down, with the tripod sort of attached at the bottom, just to protect things from getting bashed against. But as I mentioned in my tripod video for the Sunwayfoto tripod I use my tripod bag, which fits this in atop as well. So damaging other stuff's not an issue because the bag does all the protection for me. But it's nice to know that you get that as an included accessory, and it's a nice quality piece of material. You know, these accessories, you can feel the quality there, and it just reiterates that Sunwayfoto pay great attention to detail, I think, and they don't skimp on any area of their products. So I just want to finish this video by saying thank you to Sunwayfoto. They don't pay me to make these reviews and to use their products and test them out, but they do send me them for free as one of their ambassadors. So yeah, thanks to them for sending me this kit to test. My views and opinions, I try to remain you know, as neutral and impartial as possible, and I certainly have experience of other manufacturers and other styles of equipment in terms of ball heads, panel tilts and so on. But I try not to let the gifted status of these products affect my opinion of them. You know, I wouldn't continue to use these products if they weren't doing a good job for me, and it's testament to the fact that they do a good job for me that I continue to use them. They're really well made, they're solid. If there are any small disadvantages, let's say, in a product that I've used in the past, you know, Sunwayfoto always listen to you as a professional photographer, as one of their ambassadors, and they carry that information into their next design. So it's fantastic to see the progression that they make as well in terms of the design and the manufacture of their items. So yeah, thank you to them for sending me this kit to review, and thank you to you for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.